At my cousin's wedding, my uncle demanded, "You're just here to take photos and not to eat." Then I observed my $4,700 gift had already been opened. I quietly picked it up and disappeared. I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this story, but here I am, 3 days later, still processing what happened at my cousin's wedding. The whole thing feels like a fever dream, but the empty space on my credit card statement reminds me it was very real. Let me start from the beginning. My cousin was getting married last Saturday, and despite our family's complicated history, I decided to be the bigger person and attend. I'd spent weeks agonizing over the perfect gift, a premium espresso machine that cost me $4,700. It wasn't just about the money. It was about making a statement. After years of being treated like the family outsider, I wanted to show that I'd made something of myself. The wedding was at an upscale venue downtown. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying the elegantly wrapped gift. The moment I walked into the reception area, I spotted my uncle, the father of the bride, holding court near the gift table. He saw me approaching, and his expression immediately soured. He walked over with that familiar condescending look I remembered from childhood. Without any pleasantries, he told me I was only there to take photos and document the event, not to eat or participate like a regular guest. The words hit me like a slap. He explained that they'd already arranged for the photographer and didn't need my services, but since I was family, I could stay and take some candid shots for personal memories. I stood there stunned. I hadn't brought a camera. I wasn't there as a photographer. I was there as family, as a guest who'd traveled 3 hours and spent a fortune on a gift. But before I could respond, he walked away, dismissing me entirely. Feeling humiliated, I made my way to the gift table to place my carefully chosen present among the others. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. My gift, the distinctive silver wrapping paper I'd specifically chosen, the exact size and shape of the box, was sitting there opened. The ribbon was neatly placed beside it, and through the partially opened box, I could see the corner of the espresso machine's packaging. My hands started shaking. They'd opened my gift before the reception even started. Not only had they opened it, but they'd done it carelessly, probably just checking what expensive item they'd received. The gift tag with my name was still attached, so they knew exactly who it was from. I looked around the room, trying to spot my cousin or her new husband. I found them near the bar, laughing with friends. My cousin was gesturing animatedly, and I caught fragments of their conversation. She was telling someone about the amazing espresso machine they'd received, how it was exactly what they'd wanted for their new home, how they were already planning to use it for their morning routine. She was talking about my gift like it was some anonymous present from their registry. No mention of me, no acknowledgement that I'd gone far beyond what anyone else had given. Just casual excitement about their new expensive appliance. That's when something inside me snapped. Not the dramatic, explosive kind of anger you see in movies, but a cold, calculating fury that spread through my chest like ice water. I'd been planning to confront them, to demand an explanation, but suddenly I had a better idea. I walked back to the gift table with purpose. The venue was getting busier as more guests arrived, and no one was paying attention to the presents anymore. With steady hands, I picked up my open gift, tucked it under my arm, and headed for the exit. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from the absolute rightness of what I was doing. They treated me like hired help, opened my gift without permission, and then dismissed my gesture entirely. If I was just there to take photos and not eat, then I certainly wasn't there to give expensive gifts either. I made it to my car without anyone stopping me. Part of me expected someone to chase after me, but the parking lot was empty except for the valet attendants who were busy with arriving guests. I placed the espresso machine carefully in my trunk and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, processing what I'd just done. The rational part of my brain was screaming that I'd just stolen a wedding gift, my own wedding gift, technically, but still. The emotional part was celebrating the first time I'd ever stood up to my family's treatment of me. I drove home instead of staying for the ceremony. 3 hours on the highway gave me plenty of time to think about what would happen next. By the time I reached my apartment, I decided to wait and see how long it would take them to notice. Update 1. It took exactly 18 hours. Sunday evening, my phone started buzzing with missed calls. First my aunt, then my uncle, then several cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages were fascinating to listen to. My aunt's first message was confused. She asked if I'd seen an espresso machine go missing from the gift table, and whether I might know anything about it. By her third message, the tone had shifted to accusatory. She demanded I call back immediately and explain myself. My uncle's message was predictably aggressive. He accused me of embarrassing the family and demanded I return the stolen property immediately. He threatened to call the police if I didn't respond within 24 hours. But the most interesting message came from my cousin, the bride herself. Her voice was strained. probably from the stress of realizing that their expensive new appliance had vanished. She asked me to please call her back so we could work this out like adults. I didn't call anyone back. Instead, I spent Sunday setting up the espresso machine in my kitchen. It was absolutely beautiful, sleek stainless steel with all the premium features I'd researched for weeks. Making my first cup of coffee with it felt like the most expensive act of rebellion I'd ever committed. Monday morning brought more calls, plus the first text messages. My aunt tried a different approach, appealing to family loyalty and asking me to do the right thing. My uncle stuck to threats, mentioning lawyers and police reports. But Tuesday is when things got interesting. I received a call from my cousin's new husband. He'd been silent through all the family drama, but apparently, he'd decided to try the reasonable approach. He explained that they understood there had been some kind of misunderstanding at the wedding, and they were willing to overlook my moment of confusion if I returned their gift. Their gift. He actually called it their gift. I finally broke my silence and called him back. I told him I was confused by his message. I hadn't taken anyone else's gift, only my own. If they'd opened it and used it before I retrieved it, that was unfortunate, but it was still my property until they actually received it properly. He tried to argue that giving a gift at a wedding meant it belonged to the couple immediately, regardless of when they opened it. I pointed out that I'd never actually given them the gift. I'd simply brought it to give, but then decided against it when I was told I wasn't really a guest. The conversation went in circles for 20 minutes before he hung up on me. Update 2. By Wednesday, the story had spread through our extended family like wildfire. I started getting calls from relatives I'd forgotten existed, all wanting to hear my side of the story. The interesting thing was how the narrative had evolved as it passed through the family gossip network. According to some versions, I'd stolen multiple gifts. Others claimed I'd caused a scene at the wedding, shouting and making threats. One particularly creative version had me breaking into the venue after hours to steal presents. The reality, that I'd quietly retrieved my own open gift and left without a word, seemed almost anticlimactic compared to the stories circulating. My grandmother called Thursday evening. She was the family matriarch, the one person whose opinion actually carried weight with everyone else. I expected her to lecture me about family loyalty and demand I make amends. Instead, she surprised me. She asked me to tell her exactly what happened, step by step. I explained everything. The dismissive treatment from my uncle, being told I was only there to take photos, discovering my open gift, and my decision to take it back. There was a long silence after I finished. Then she asked how much the gift had cost. When I told her, she whistled softly, something I'd never heard her do before. She told me she'd always known my uncle could be difficult, but she hadn't realized how badly he'd been treating me. She said she'd heard about the photography comment from other guests who had witnessed it, and she was embarrassed by her son's behavior. Then she said something that completely validated my decision. If they'd opened my gift without permission and treated me like hired help instead of family, then they'd forfeited any right to that gift. She promised to handle the rest of the family drama, and true to her word, the angry calls stopped by Friday. Update 3. It's been a month now, and the dust has mostly settled. My grandmother apparently had some very direct conversations with my uncle about his treatment of family members. I heard through other relatives that he was strongly encouraged to reconsider his behavior at family events. The most surprising development came 2 weeks ago. My cousin, the bride, reached out to me directly. Not through family members, not through her husband, but a personal message asking if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant, but curious enough to agree. She looked exhausted when she arrived at the cafe. The post-wedding stress was clearly taking its toll. She apologized immediately, not just for the gift situation, but for not standing up to her father's treatment of me at the wedding. She explained that she'd been so focused on managing wedding stress that she hadn't really processed what was happening until later. She'd seen her father dismiss me, but assumed it was just his usual gruffness, not realizing how hurtful his words had been. As for the open gift, she admitted they'd been opening presents early to write thank you notes and organize everything for their honeymoon. They'd seen the expensive espresso machine and been thrilled, but in the chaos of wedding preparations, they'd lost track of which gift came from whom. She offered to buy me an identical espresso machine if I'd return theirs. I appreciated the gesture, but told her I'd grown quite attached to mine. The coffee tasted better when it was made with self-respect. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about the family dynamics I'd been dealing with my whole life. How my uncle had always been territorial about his position as the successful sibling, how he felt threatened by younger family members who were doing well. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it helped me understand it. By the end of our conversation, we'd reached an understanding. I kept the espresso machine, but not as an act of spite anymore. It had become a symbol of finally standing up for myself, of refusing to accept treatment that diminished my worth as a person. She asked if I consider coming to family events in the future. I told her I'd think about it, but things would need to be different. I wasn't willing to be treated as anything less than an equal member of the family. The espresso machine sits on my kitchen counter now, making perfect coffee every morning. Sometimes I think about the wedding, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of satisfied closure. I'd spent years accepting poor treatment because I thought family loyalty meant tolerating disrespect. That $4,700 espresso machine taught me that respect is something you can't buy, but you can definitely take back when it's not freely given. Every cup of coffee reminds me that sometimes the most important person to stand up for is yourself. My uncle hasn't spoken to me since the incident. I'm surprisingly okay with that. Some relationships aren't worth preserving if they require you to diminish yourself to maintain them. The family still talks about the wedding incident at gatherings, but the tone has shifted. Instead of scandalous gossip, it's become a cautionary tale about treating family members with respect. My grandmother made sure of that. I've been invited to 2 family events since then. I attended both, and the difference in how I was treated was remarkable. Apparently, taking back that espresso machine had earned me something I'd never had before, the respect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just quietly refusing to accept less than you deserve and walking away with your dignity intact. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, it comes with excellent coffee every morning.